Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Near Memo. Today with Greg and Mike, or Mike and Greg as the case may be. And we want to thank everybody who has subscribed to the newsletter now that it's a paid product. It seems like we're in this group of people doing this. The Verge and others are starting to do this, but this is what we need to do to keep going. And we thank everybody who has signed up. We've had a very good response. Keep it coming. This podcast will remain in front of the paywall, and we'll do some other stuff that's in front of the paywall, but the twice weekly newsletter and most of our analysis is going behind the paywall. So today's topics are name stuffing, Rand Fishkin's very interesting research about what 300 million queries reveal, or 332 million queries reveal about the state of Google. And then we're going to be talking about some yet unreleased research that I did on consumer behavior, search versus AI. We're going to be talking about one data point about people's attitudes toward Google today, which ties very much into the Rand Fishkin stuff. So, Mike, name stuffing.
Sure. I am going to share my screen real quickly. Give me 1 second to do that. Screen share is on. So for those of us who grew up in local SEO and grew up with the Google rules around business naming that were set in the early 2010s, 2012, 2013, that a name should reflect how your business is known in the real world, we still haven't quite wrapped our head around how Google has changed their attitude toward business naming. But there's two cases that I've worked on recently in the Google forum that seem to at least put some parameters around it, if you can look at it that way. One is our favorite doctor in Seattle, Dr. Javad Sajan, of Allure Aesthetic. He was the fellow who was charged $5 million for breaking review laws.
Review fraud.
Fake reviews. What's that?
Review fraud
And various other attributes of reviews. He also uses namespan and continues to rank very well on searches like Best Plastic Surgeon in Seattle, which he claims to be in his name. So this case, both the reviews and the naming were escalated to Google, and Google came back and said that this name was acceptable. Another more egregious example is this Secundus Law Group, where if you search for sexual harassment in New York City, sexual harassment lawyer in New York City, they get a singular one box showing just them. And you can see that their name includes a number of descriptors. And so this also was escalated via the forum, and Google came back and refused to take any action against the name. And I think in both of these, people need to realize that Google has, whether out of self-interest or some other
inscrutable motivation.
Probably out of self-interest, because they don't want to be dealing with this. They've set some other unwritten rules around naming that prevent names like this from being flagged as inappropriate, even when brought directly to their attention. And I think that we can look at these as sort of setting boundaries around what are acceptable names. In this particular search, Best Plastic Surgeon in Seattle, both the top two results claim to be the best plastic surgery. This one's in Bellevue. And in this one, there's not even competition for it, although I believe this law group also shows up for employment discrimination law, et cetera. And I think business practitioners and businesses need to be aware of these new parameters. And I think it's probably incumbent on somebody to test how far this can go. Now, I would caution people that this is in light of the new suspension environment that we wrote about last week, where at least in certain high stress categories, even breathing on your GBP listing causes it to get suspended. It appears, though, that one could include a tagline of some length, and if sooner or later get both reinstated and have the benefit of having this name. And the way the algorithm works is Google uses the business name as a relevance signal. And when the relevance signal of the business name is much greater than the next closest competitor, if you go to Google Maps, wherever, then they show just one. And so at least over the next period of time, I think this provides a tremendous competitive advantage. Again, it may cause you to get temporarily suspended. You might have to re-verify. But I think that in the end, at least in this particular case, certainly worth it. And I think that somebody should test what the limits of this are and where Google draws the line.
Yeah. Andrew Shotland, are you listening? And Darren Shaw, are you listening?
The problem is that it ends up resulting in some amount of suspension.
Right.
So obviously there's some risk to it, but I think that, particularly if you add this tagline to your business name and to your website, I think that long haul you would, be fine. But it's just fascinating to me that these did not come down.
Yeah. So a couple of points, so name spam is as old as the print yellow pages, right? People used to do AAA plumbing to get to the top of the page, which was a traditional media version of name spam. And
yes, when things were just alphabetized as opposed to geographicized.
Right,
or whatever the phrase is.
So there's nothing new about this, obviously, and people have been recommending name spam or keyword stuffing in the business name for a long time, and have said at various points that it's an effective way to improve your ranking. So this isn't, a revelation in any way, but Google's tolerance of it is the new thing that you're calling out, I think, here.
Yeah,
and or seeming tolerance of it.
Yeah, there is obvious tolerance of some amount of it. The question is where the line's drawn. But I think a great deal of benefit if you use these two examples. You can, if you land, no greater than these two, I think you can find a happy place.
Well, there's another perspective on this, which is this is a form of branding going on, right? So we've talked a lot, and we'll talk later about brands and Google's affinity for brands, or consumer affinity for brands, and Google's responsiveness to that. So when you say, name, best, fill in the blank, when people do those category searches, you're kind of creating a brand around that in a certain way. And Google is kind of responding by showing, it's kind of the name, I forget the algorithm name or the, from the leaks. It doesn't matter. But this is one lens to look at this through. And the difference between the two examples that I think you showed is the review fraudster, the plastic surgeon in Seattle, kind of had a hyphen and then what was a kind of effectively a descriptor, best plastic surgeon.
Right.
And the second one, the law firm, didn't do that. I mean, this is a subtle difference, and just had a bunch of keywords that kind of were closer. I mean, that sort of became like less of a descriptor and more, this is the business name. That may be a distinction.
Well, again, both are
a difference.
Essentially taglines.
Right.
I mean, in a traditional sense, Seconda's law group, sexual harassment, employment discrimination, unpaid overtime lawyers.
Right.
Clearly, this is what they focus on.
Anyway, the larger point is Google seems to be tolerating keyword stuffing to a degree. We don't know to what extent. This is very much like the hours, in a sense of the impact it will have. So when business hours were seen to be a ranking factor in terms of when you're open versus closed, right? You don't show up when you're closed and you show up when you're open, and everybody's quickly turned to 24/7, right? We're open all the time, unless you couldn't do that. But if you were a service business, you could sort of do that. If you were a consultant, a realtor, lawyer, whatever.
A lawyer who answers his phone 24/7.
Right. You could sort of make the argument. This will promote the same kind of behavior, if in fact people
start, as you point out, this is not new.
Right.
But what is new is the tolerance, and I think that people need to explore that tolerance in a more structured way, and so that they can come to the determination as to exactly how many of these descriptors Google allows.
Well, it's I think Google with limited resources deciding we're going to fight some battles and not others. We're going to let this go. We're going to fight against, review spam to some degree. We're going to let this one go because this is more benign or more innocuous, as the case may be. It's just going to make for a lot of really unpleasant business names, I think, going forward. All right, so
has made for. I mean, there's some categories where you can't tell the difference who they are because they all have picked the same names, right?
Yeah,
this is storage or moving, those kinds of things. Where we've seen it a lot. So.
Which paradoxically is bad for branding. I talked about it as a branding move, but if your business name is too generic, then there's nothing memorable about it. And for example, let me give you a little kind of anecdote. We got carpet cleaned on a regular basis from this one company, and it's time to get these carpets cleaned again. And I got a call from them reminding me that it was time to do that, and I just can't remember the friggin' name of the company. I didn't write it down because I was in the middle of a bunch of stuff. They didn't send me an email. So brand, some memorable brand has value, right? And sort of generic lines like best carpet cleaning company in, Berkeley, California is not going to be memorable. Anyway. All right.
Well, and in both these cases, though, they're utilizing the name span as a tagline, and their brand is first in the name. And
the business name.
Right. From a branding point of view, I think it can be done in a positive way. This is your company. This is what you do. And I think that if you structure it that way, I think you'll find
that'll be tolerated.
Right. Yeah, Google will tolerate it, and customers will be able to remember that that Candace law is the sexual harassment.
Is where these things are addressed. Okay.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.